Hello, everybody, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you wanted to start with episode 117 of Common Knowledge. I don't know, maybe you do. This is the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards, and I tell you, are they any good in the Pauper format or not? Let's get started, and we'll click this button and see what our first card is. It is Marrow Sky Swimmer. Hey, we've talked about this card before because we did a whole Lorwyn Eclipsed Pauper guide. So we've definitely I've given this thing a score before. I don't remember the score, but we have not done it outside of that giant Pauper buyer's guide video. So let's do that this time. Mostly because I just really like this Richard Kane Ferguson art. Marrow Sky Swimmers 3 and 2 Azorius hybrids, so white or blue, and then another white or blue. And you get a 2/2 Merfolk Soldier with Convoke. Your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 colorless or 1 mana of that creature's color. Or 1 generic, I guess I should say. Anyway, this is a 2/2 with Flying and Vigilance, and when this creature enters, you create a 1/1 white and blue Merfolk creature token. 5 mana for a 2/2 Flying Vigilance that puts a 1/1 token on the board. It's fine. It's okay. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It costs a little bit too much, but the Convoke is there to try to help that. And then also, if you're convoking more of these guys in later, now you've put 2 extra bodies on the table. So this can help convoke the next guy too. Kind of snowballs a little bit. And it's got Vigilance. So, you attack in with this guy. He flies. He's got Vigilance. You attack. You get the attack in. And then you can convoke him on your second main phase. Sure. There's stuff you can do. But overall, it's a little vanilla for what you get. A 2/2 Flying Vigilance is fine, but there's lots of things that can stop this. A Core Skyfisher costs 2 mana and blocks this all day. This costs 5 mana. Well, though it could cost as low as 2 mana, but still, you're putting in a bunch of resources for that. And there are some creatures that can just straight up block it and do pretty well. Is this really worth like a blink or a bounce? Not really. The blink maybe, but you're blinking just to get another token on the board. There's plenty of ways to get better tokens than this, and you're not wanting to bounce it because then you have to tap down even more stuff with the convoke ability. It's fine. It's fine. 2/2 Flying Vigilance. Those are pretty good stats for a pretty good creature. But when you account for all the resources you're putting in, I don't know. I'm going to give this a 2.5. I think it's all right, but relatively normal. Taproot Kami is a Betrayers of Kamigawa card. We always love to see more Kamigawa here on the channel. Taproot Kami is a single green mana for a 0-star spirit creature. And it has Defender and Reach, so it can block creatures with flying. And it can't attack because it's got Defender. But Taproot Kami's toughness is equal to the number of forests on the battlefield. Not just yours, your opponent's too. It's kind of cool. But it's not that great, right? And in some ways, this is, if you put this out on turn 1, it's a 0/1 with Defender and Reach. That's pretty bad. And I wouldn't say it starts getting good until it's at least like a 0/4, right? So it's actually it's weird. It's a 1-drop that's actually pretty bad in the early game. And it's not that great in the late game either. I mean, sure, you potentially have 8 forests down. You get a 1-drop that's a 0/8 Defender and Reach. Okay, that'll block all day long, but on turn 8, you probably want something that helps you win the game, not something that defends you at that point. I don't think this is a very good card. There's probably always another card you would rather play at every stage in the game. The only thing I can think of where maybe it would be a little bit more useful is if you're trying to double spell. If you have things that say, once you cast your second spell, each turn a thing happens. And this guy's really cheap. He potentially in like the middle and late game isn't a terrible card to play if it's one of the 2 or 3 spells you're playing that turn. But again, you probably just have better stuff you can play on those turns. So I don't particularly love them as much as I do love a Kamigawa card, especially a Kamigawa Spirit. Gotta love those. But I think I'm gonna give this guy a. I think I'm gonna give him a 1.7. It's pretty bad. Your one drop really needs to be able to do something on turn one. Agir Battle Seer is 3 and is it? So a blue and a red for a 3/4 Ogre Shaman with haste, and it can tap to scry 1. 5 mana for a 3/4. Yeah, I don't particularly love that. And it's got haste, but it also has a tap ability. And that's interesting, I guess. Like, it's cool to have a creature with a tap ability and haste because it can use the tap ability the turn it comes into play. Okay, but this card, in one sense, is saying, would you like to pay 5 to scry 1 this turn? That's kind of all it would do, because if you're tapping to scry, it's not going to be able to block, and you're not getting the attack in. You could have this come in and attack on turn 1, so then you're just having a 3/4 with haste, so you're not getting the value out of the tap ability, but the tap ability is pretty bad. This is not a very good tap ability. Scrying 1, hey, I like Scrying 1. Don't get me wrong. I think Scrying is a pretty great thing to do in Magic, but when you have 5 mana and you're putting this thing out and all you're getting out of it on a turn is either Scrying 1 or swinging for 3. Now, okay, you can put this down and then block your opponent's creature or threaten to block your opponent's creature, and if your opponent doesn't do anything, then you can tap it down for the little bit of value at the end of their turn, fix your own draw. That's probably the best case scenario. That's still not great. It feels like a big waste of your turn to put down 5 mana just to have a guy who might be able to block somebody. And then if they don't, okay, your consolation prize is scrying 1. I don't like it. I really don't. I'm gonna give it a 1.9. I don't even want to give it the honor of getting a 2, and 2 is not a very good score in this ranking that I'm doing. Harvester Druid is 1 and a green for a 1/1 human druid. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color a land you control could produce. Is that like a... Oh goodness, what is that card? It's not Mana Confluence. That's any color, right? No, that's any color and it deals you damage. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. Reflecting Pool. There you go. Boom. Reflecting Pool. Reflecting Pool is pretty good. That's why it costs so much. This creature's a Reflecting Pool, but it costs 2 mana and it's a 1/1, and it's 13 cents. Pretty funny. Pretty funny when you consider that. This isn't good. This just isn't good. 2 mana for a mana dork already is a little too expensive, especially in green where you can just have cheap mana dorks that don't necessarily produce any color like this guy could, but they ramp you. Like the more important part is that they're ramping you at all. And this guy ramps you, but he's got so many drawbacks. 1/1, really easy to pick off. Yeah, this guy is pretty bad too. He's better than any of the other cards we've seen so far today, but that is not saying a whole lot. Let's give him a 2.3. No, we had something that we gave a 2.5 to. So there are better cards than this guy that we've seen, but also pretty bad. Chandra's Revolution is 3 and a red for a sorcery. Chandra's Evolution deals 4 damage to target creature. You tap target land. That land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. That can be pretty devastating. 4 damage to a creature takes out a decent amount of creatures in Pauper. Not some of the most impactful ones, but ones that certainly would matter. And then tapping down a land, and that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So you're not full on destroying the lands, which some Pauper decks can definitely do, but you are denying lands for a little bit. That's not bad. Is this good enough, though? A 4-mana sorcery that deals 4 damage isn't awesome, and then it feels like the land was just kind of thrown in there as, hey, we realize that 4 damage at sorcery speed for 4 mana is pretty bad. What if we did this other thing too? And I don't know. I think you'd have to have a really specific kind of build to really feel the value out of this, but I don't know what that build would be. I don't know what the cards you'd want to put in there to help this along, because I think you'd rather just have lightning bolts and stone rains than a card that tries to combine both of those 2 cards into one, and relatively poor versions of both of those cards. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'll give it a 2.1. And that's mostly because it can remove a creature, but even the creatures, it's not killing the best ones. Limduel's High Guard. I love this card. I love this art, but I gotta shout out my favorite art, which is this other Anson Maddox art. This is my guy right here. I've put this into a number of cubes, mostly just for the art. I love this guy quite a bit. Anyway, Limduel's High Guard is 1 in double black for a 2/1 skeleton with first strike, and you can pay 1 in a black to regenerate this creature. It's probably not good these days, but it was pretty good back in its day, I think. I wasn't playing during alliances, so I guess I don't know that for a fact, but a two power first striker, even for 3 mana back in those times, could scare off a lot of people from attacking you. And if you buffed this thing at all, if you gave this thing an unholy strength and now it's a 4/2 with first strike, whew, you felt invincible, right? And then you felt double invincible because this thing is kind of invincible in that it has the regenerate. So if somebody tries to lightning bolt this, or somebody does have a bigger creature in combat, you can block with this all day long as you continue to have the mana. You remove it from combat afterward, and this thing just sticks around. It lives. It stops opponents from attacking you, and even if those opponents do attack into you, you have ways of just stalling them out. It's not a terrible attacker either because of the first strike. It's okay. It's an okay card. But in modern Pauper times, it's not good. It's just a dinosaur at this point. And as much as I love it, and it will absolutely 100%, this will get the thumbnail this day. But I can't in good conscience give this thing anything more than a 2.3, and that's still me being a little generous. This card's not that good. It's not even as good as a 2.3, but man, do I love it. Really do love it. And hey, this is great art too. Don't get me wrong. I also love this art, but the other one's still my favorite. Keep going on to Refocus, which is 1 in a blue for an instant. You untap target creature and you draw a card. That's okay. That is okay. That can do. That's like a cool combat trick in some ways. Untapping the creature, the opponent swings in thinking they're just fine. You get to untap a creature, block something real nicely, and then you also draw a card. This replaces itself. I don't hate it. If you've got some kind of busted tap ability, this allows you to tap again. Could be okay. I don't hate it. It's probably a little narrow. The places where you can really get good value out of it are some pretty extreme edge cases, but I think it does halfway decent work in those edge cases. You have like a Freed from the Real, which is an aura that allows you to untap a creature And so you can do infinite mana stuff with that, and you only get to do this the one time because it's an instant. But this does draw you the card, so it does replace itself. I think this is probably a little underplayed, and it's not too bad. I'm gonna give this a 3.1. I'm kind of impressed with that little card. Next up is Grizzled Leotau. Leotau. It's Selesnya mana. It's green and a white for a 1/5 cat. That's all it does. But it's 2 mana for a 1/5. Enough. Is that a good enough stat line? Not. We're kind of putting Pauper to the side right now. No, this is not a good Pauper card for sure. It's a 1/5. It's a vanilla 1/5. It doesn't fly. It doesn't have reach. It doesn't have any way to really stop opponents. Doesn't have vigilance. Really feels like this thing should at least have vigilance, right? But if we kind of put that aside, thinking this is not going to be a great Pauper card, don't worry about it, and we just think about 2 mana for 1/5 of stats, does that feel fair these days? Do we feel like we've power crept past a 1/5 for 2 mana? We've gotten 0/5s for 1 mana, right? Aegis Turtle, I believe, from Foundations. Aegis Turtle. Yep, 0/5 for 1 mana. So like is that second colored pip worth 1 point of power for the Leotau? And I don't think it is. I think this has probably been power crept out of the format or power crept out of basically any format at this point. Yeah, not a great card. And when we think about Pauper, it's just pretty terrible. The only thing I can think of, and Pauper doesn't really have cards that work like this, but you do see some of the toughness matters strategies in other formats. Could this potentially be used as, if you have the Door in the Siege Tower as your commander, and you put this guy out? This is a 2 mana 5/5 in some ways. That's pretty good. It's in the right colors for Doran. Still not very good. But, let's give him a 1.5. Just because of the power and toughness. It doesn't deserve that, but we'll give it to it anyway. Next up is Structural Distortion. It is a 3 and a red for a sorcery. Exile target artifact or land. Ooh. Structural Distortion deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. I don't hate this. I think this is a whole lot better than Chandra's Evolution. Exiling the land is really nice, or an artifact. That's also okay too. I like the modality on that. That works for a lot of decks. You put something like this into your Ponza deck, and yeah, you'd love to exile the land, but if your opponent has put on its head of lands here, is exiling 1 land really going to do anything? Maybe not. Now you can just exile an artifact if they've got one of those out there, or maybe you bring it in to exile an artifact. And if you can't, or if the Grixis Affinity isn't putting out a good artifact for you to take out, you go, oh well, let me exile your red source. So now you're only down to Dimir mana. Maybe they have a Dimir Aqueduct into play, one of the bounce lands, and you go, oh well, let me exile this thing that makes you 2 mana. Those are some pretty dirty plays. I dig it. Now it does still cost 4 mana. And 4 mana to exile an artifact or a land is not amazing, especially when you have something like Cast in the Fire, which costs half as much as this, and it can exile an artifact. Now, it doesn't exile the land, but you could exile the artifact lands and get a similar thing. Those lands are used enough where you can probably get enough value out of Cast into the Fire that you might not need this. I do like that it deals just an extra couple damage to the opponent. Sure, why not? Do a little extra damage. If you get enough cost reducers, and there's plenty of familiars and things that will help to make this cheaper. Yeah, this could be pretty effective. It's probably a little slow for even the Ponza decks that have a lot of 3 mana ways of destroying lands. And even some 2-mana ways of destroying lands. But I like it. I do kind of like it. I'm going to give this a 2.8. No, I could even do higher. I'll give it just a straight 3. Straight 3. Pretty decent card. Countess, or not Countess, Countless. Countless Gears Renegade is 1 and a white for a 2/2 dwarf archer. Archer. Ooh, artificer. It's getting late. And it's got Revolt. When this creature enters, if a permanent left the battlefield under your control this turn, you create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Okay. So it's a grizzly bear, but the Revolt makes for some interesting plays. Orzhov Blade decks are picking up and putting down permanents all the time. You know, you put your Glinthawk out, you bounce something back to your hand. Now you play this guy, and now you get this guy and the token. The token's an artifact. Maybe that helps out your affinity for artifacts. For your refurbished familiar, you can bounce that back in with another Glinthawk, or there's ways of making something like that work. It could be okay. The Orzhov Blade decks, though, have a lot of good creatures in them already, and I don't think this guy's good enough to really break into that. Maybe at one point he would have been, but these days I think you just have better cards, and this guy kind of is on the outside looking in. I can't think of another deck that might want this. You're not really going to need that with Mono White Heroic. Jeskai has some bounce stuff that I guess it could work, but you're playing so many colors that you have so many good cards available to you. I don't think you play this guy there either. It's not bad. It's like you're getting 3/3 worth of stats for 2 mana. Those are nice things, but the other interesting thing, you use Ephemerate on just this, and it's already triggered itself, right? Because you Ephemerate this, it leaves the battlefield, and then it comes back into play, and it goes, oh, hey, I entered and something else left, right? Yeah, so you just get the 1/1 automatically. That's kind of fun. Maybe there is some blinky stuff you can do with this. It's not great though. There's just better cards you could be playing than this, and it makes this not as good. It's a little sad, but it's true. I will give this guy a 2.7. 2.7. I do kind of like the guy. And for a bonus card, let's talk about Ison Bureaucrats. It's 1 and a white for a 1/1 human advisor. You can tap it to tap target creature with power 2 or less from Homeland, so you know it's good. I kind of like this 5th edition art too. Look at that. It's not very good. It's not particularly good. Not in a format that already has access to Master Decoy and some other things that will tap creatures with less restrictions than this. Tapping a creature with power 2 or less is, you'll have a lot of targets for sure. In Pauper, definitely. There's plenty of 2-power creatures in decks. Some decks are really only playing creatures with power 2 or less. But when you're playing creatures with power 2 or less, you're usually going wide. And so does any one individual creature getting in do a heck of a lot? Not always. So tapping one creature down, especially when you have to tap this guy down to do it, is just, it's setting you for the same board presence that you had before. And that's not very good. No, it's not very good. I think I'm going to give this a 1.6. It's also a 1/1. Really easy to pick off. Not amazing, but I do like the art. And you know what? I don't hate either of these Homelands arts too. These are pretty good. But yeah, 1.6, and we'll call it there. We'll see you next time.